Northeast to Lagos.
Yes.
Morning.
Welcome. Join the conversation and be a part of it by sending comments to WhatsApp 0809 444 0981 at 0809 444 0981. You can also send through Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @smooth981fm. The hashtag is freshlypressed981. We're streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth981fm Lagos. So you can type smooth981 Lagos in the search box and you'll find us. I'm on Instagram live at Valentine Ohu. You can watch and ask, leave your comments there as well. Let's start with this first story. Tunde, from the Guardian newspaper, El-Rufai, the Kaduna state governor, denies paying kidnappers ransom by proxy. What's your take on this story as he was speaking on the recent accusations or allegations that he pays kidnappers ransom?
Okay, so this position has emanated from reports that have emerged that El-Rufai compensated, or as Guardian said, offsets. I'm sure they meant to write offsets the ransom paid by the families of kidnapped victims, the 10 workers that were kidnapped. That the state governments offset the ransom that he paid. And consequently, therefore, if you are offsetting the ransom that individuals have paid for for securing the release of their family members and their loved ones, that you are paying ransom by proxy, which in reality is kind of true. That's what it means. While you can understand the need to compensate families, but directly, the story is true. Directly compensating them for ransom paid creates a complication. Do you understand? So I don't see how you can deny that you pay ransom if it can be proven that you are compensating families for ransom money paid. It's black and white. It's chalk. There's no gray. There's no in between. I don't know that. And very often we hear this. We don't know that the government, federal and or state, has a clear policy of not paying ransom. Do you understand? Because very often you hear we're working with mediators, we're working with these go-betweens, and we all know in Nigeria what that means. Someone is, not just facilitating conversations, but also facilitating the exchange of value. And very often you hear, the bandits, claim that they have made money. Let's also be honest, right? Kidnapping won't have grown to the large-scale industry it has in the country if there wasn't an exchange of value, either from private individuals and other governments, right? But any country, to be honest, who doesn't unequivocally refuse to pay ransom will always place itself in a mess, right? Because once you start, you can't stop, and you will always find elements that do that. Even in the West, even although, it's official states, policy, you look at the United States and most Western nations to refuse to pay ransom, you can't stop family members, however, from, even though the clear instruction from the law enforcement would be, do not negotiate with kidnappers directly, do not pay ransom, but once in a while, probably more than once in a while, you do find the exchange of ransom for the release of family members. The only difference is that very often, law enforcement in those nations are more developed. So the likelihood of apprehending, kidnappers and perpetrators is somewhat higher. Here, it's become a full-scale industry. I couldn't expect the state government to do anything other than deny that they don't pay ransom. It is the responsible as an administration, as a government, it's a responsible thing to do. But then perhaps they probably need to pay a bit more attention to how they go about compensating, families who have suffered this, atrocious act. Maybe not as a direct, cash reimbursement for funds spent and support in other ways. They just need to rethink that strategy, because yes, it is. If as a kidnapper, if you know that you can extract money from families because the state government and families are willing to pay because state governments are going to reimburse them, that's paying by proxy. It encourages the whole process. It feeds the industry.
Thank you, Tunde. And which comes as no surprise, as Pastor Tunde Bakari described it as a startup kidnap industry. Because in the statements where he was quoted yesterday, he said the startup kidnap industry has secured funding and has now scaled from Dapchi to Kankara and from Kagara to Jangebe and elsewhere. And that's in line with the comment from Reverend Father Matthew Kuka, also saying that Labastin Buhari-led government, that his legacy is at risk of being, disparaged.
Swallowed up by all of
what's happening.
Yeah.
Mr. C, what are your thoughts
on
this recent comment? Sorry, Tunde. Mr. C.
Thank you, Valentine. So, Messrs. Cook and Bakari yesterday in their respective Easter messages to Christians in the nation and beyond did comment on the rising level of insecurity in the country, and they did state that Nigeria was literally on the brink of anarchy and a breakdown of law and order. Now, they made several references to kidnapping, like you said, also to the fact that Father Kuka specifically did say that the Buhari administration seemed to be more concerned about the Boko Haram repentance in quotes, and appeared also to show little or no empathy towards their victims. And that all over the country, there's a rising level of insecurity. And what they said was just a reflection of what the average Nigerian sees. If we go through the headlines over the past 6 months to 8 months, there has been no day that we haven't come across one report or the other of some measure of insecurity. If it's not a Boko Haram attack, it's a kidnapping of innocent school children, kidnapping of private individuals. You have herdsmen, reported cases of alleged Fulani herdsmen committing all sorts of crimes. And this has led to the establishment of regional security initiatives like the Western Security Network, codenamed Amotepu. Then you have the Eastern Security Network. Now, these networks are evidence or proof of the fact that security in Nigeria now is at alarming levels. You have foreign missions regularly publishing security directives, where not to go, where to go. If you must absolutely go to certain locations, do not spend more than a stated number of days. And the federal government's response each time is to suggest that the reports are being blown out of proportion. Now, Garba Shehu, who is the senior special assistant of media to the president, issued a rejoinder to Father Kuka's statement saying that he did not speak as a man of God. That Boko Haram, the impact of Boko Haram is not as great now as it was in 2014. With all due respect to Garba Shehu, I disagree. Because we're all in Nigeria. We all know people who are from Borno, who are from Adamawa, who are from Yobe. And they tell us the truth that is not filtered out by the regular media, that is print or electronic. And the truth is, we haven't yet gotten a full handle or grip on insecurity matters. And insecurity is a symptom or a fallout of a larger issue that has not yet been adequately treated, which is there are no economic opportunities available for young or middle-class Nigerians to exploit. So people will resort to crime. And like Tunde said in his response to the first story, there's no clear articulate policy of either federal government or state government to certain criminal actors. So in other countries like Israel, for example, we have a clear policy. They're not negotiating with terrorists, criminals, criminal elements. That's clear. So there's no joy. If you're a criminal in Israel, you have no joy giving them a demand notice. They're not going to pay you. But here, we don't know what's going on. Officially, they say we're not doing it. And until we address the lack of education, the lack of opportunities for people to develop businesses, for people to prosper all over the country, especially in the north. Because what it is if I have no opportunity to go to school, or I do eventually go to school, and I have no opportunity to exploit or put to use the education or skills I have gathered or learned or acquired whilst in school, the life of crime will easily beckon to me, especially if I do not have the moral character to resist that pull or urge of crime. And morality is another issue, because the fabric of the Nigerian society has broken down over the years, and more people are easily resorting to crime. That is why the era of the Yahoo boys, the benefit boys, is being glorified. On social media, just this weekend, some small underage teenager who supposedly is a benefit boy bought a car, and all the people in his area were celebrating. Now that is a sad reminder of where we've gotten to. But we need to address education, we need to address the economy and how we can develop the people, encourage them to set up businesses or get jobs. If we do not do that and do it quickly, we'll continue to discuss insecurity in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. C. Tunde, I mean, when we talk about insecurity, I like that Mr. C linked it with the lack of proper education and lack of jobs, because most of these issues have been pegged to the lack of jobs, and how youth, especially in the North, are either poor, impoverished, or just outrightly do not have a means of livelihood or where to even find shelter, which is why some of them are lured into some of these vices. But when we talk about insecurity and talk about the poverty, right? Buhari's administration seems to be targeted at the poor, elevating them from that level of abject poverty to at least a level where they can fend for themselves. Is that in a way, a shape or form, a means to address this problem?
Yes, but you see what we have and what we had is decades of rot and neglect. The other issue is one of efficacy and how efficient these programs have been. Nigeria and Nigerians have been starved of social intervention programs, really. So we have no benchmarks in that sense. We have no Nigerian benchmarks. Obviously, we may have global benchmarks. This has been what, maybe 6 going on 7 years of this administration. And they started the social intervention programs pretty early. You would expect to have seen greater impact in a sense, right? Yeah. So obviously there'll be questions around, is this money, is this money being well spent? Is this money well spent? But are we on the right track in terms of, should we have social intervention programs? Yes. It will help, and hopefully it will get us on it's heading in the right direction, right? But this is decades of neglect and rot. But beyond, the issue has gotten so bad that it's not even just going to be something that will be fixed by social intervention programs. There's also an angle of insecurity, especially the herds men crisis, that has to do with resource, right? It's a resource. It's a battle for resources, which is why I think they mentioned that this has to be a collaboration, a West African collaboration, right? Because it's a battle for herding grounds, a battle for water. The population when at independence and the population now are not in the same, they don't belong together, quite simply. So more people for limited and dwindling resource, encroachment of the Sahara, all of these things come together. So we need to think and we need to act, or else we'll continue in this spiral and in this mess.
Thank you so much, Tunde and Mr. C, for your thoughts on these stories. Let's go quickly to WhatsApp. That number to send your messages to is 0809 444 0981. Please add the prefix +234 if you're sending it from outside Nigeria. Padonsi says we have to go back to the genesis of abduction history. This whole kidnapping scenario started in 1984 when the powers that be then, who are the ones in charge now, attempted to bundle Omar Diko from London through Stansted Airport. So why the surprise about contemporary happenings?
That's a sub.
A mosquito is a mosquito, period. A really big sub, but it's interesting.
That's a technical sub.
Yeah, technical sub. Today, I'll take you to this story. Mr. C, just a second. I'll take you to this story that involved or narrated the the surrounding events of the meeting that was held behind closed doors for 4 hours between the northern religious leaders led by the Islamic scholar Gumi, and when they went to meet with the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo. They came out with communique after that meeting and also suggested that a special court be set up for banditry. What do you make of that story?
Okay, the entire story, you know that that's the words I can't use on Money Radio. But you know things have it's gotten real, right? When there is a delegation that goes to visit, Obasanjo, because say what it is that you like, say what it is, or whatever your views may be around Obasanjo, he still is and has been an integral part to the forming of the Nigerian nation states. If whether you agree it's a nation state or not, or whatever it is, the entity that is Nigeria. He has been for many decades a central figure in and out of power. And has always been influential, except maybe during the Abacha years, and which is why he was targeted anyway, to reduce his influence in a sense. So when you find delegations like this, especially, honestly, higher power delegations, you could believe from the north, especially at the time when if I were to measure a time in our history where the different ethnic groups were at the largest variance, this is probably the time. And people have said, talking to Buhari's legacy, these problems have been there, they've existed. Now, when you come in, if you can't improve the situation, at least don't make it worse, right? And it seems, unfortunately, that the actions or inactions of the administration have actually made it worse. So I don't think there's a time when the different ethnic groups have been further apart. So when you find a delegation coming from the north to go and meet with Obasanjo, because of his central role, you can imagine that things have become dire, and they view it as dire. In the south, you can sit back and say, northerners have just been spoiled. You can say all the things you want to say. You can complain about the president and where he's from, but the truth is, the people who suffer the most from the situation we're in now, the insecurity, are largely in the north, right? So it is a real and present danger. It is not a danger that they see further down the line. It is a danger for now, right? And so the communication, to me, that's the background and the context of this. Now, the recommendations are valid and useful. I mean, at least they're making recommendations. We need on the establishment of special courts. I totally agree with it. Our judicial system today is labored. If you created special problems or an emergency requires special situations. I know some people may say special courts for everything, right? But if we had a court where we could fast track these cases through, if you had courts that were dedicated to these matters, and things were handled differently and more expediently, and then perhaps we'll make some progress. And they also mentioned, so it's not just when you're matters of terrorism or banditry, but if you're caught with illegal weapons today, you should have a special court that deals with that, deal with the whole structure of insecurity, one of which is the proliferation of small arms. I mean, I don't think there's any proper structure, any focus on mopping up the small arms and prosecuting people who deal in the entire value chain, supply and possession of small arms. So to me, it's good. It's just always one of the things that happen as an indicator of how bad the situation is when these meetings happen.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Let me just chime in. Val,
Yes.
sorry, very quickly. 30 seconds. I have a slightly different twist from Tunde's proposal that he agrees with the recommendation that special courts be set up. The question I'm going to ask, the regular courts in the north that do not have the heavy caseloads their counterparts have in the south of Nigeria, how many banditry cases have been started before them? So the question is not setting up courts. The question is there a political will by the political establishment in Nigeria to prosecute people actively engaged in banditry and other similar crimes? Thank you.
Fair enough, absolutely.
Some allegations of internal meddling in terms of the credibility of such courts. And then you also question the legitimacy of the existing courts to try out this special cases, because it's special, we're in a peculiar situation. So you might want to lean into the fact that, you know, some special courts need to be set up so that you eliminate chances of bias, or in some sense, shape or form. I know that's an extraordinary suggestion, but I mean, it's something to consider.
I agree. It's a balance. I actually agree with you, Mr. C, that how well are we using what exists? But like I said, you know, try something different, whatever. It's a desperate situation.
If we're not getting the same the results we expect, we try, you know, something different, right? Austin from Satellite Town says they've come again, safe corridor for repentant Boko Haram, now special courts to try them. I laugh in French. Who's fooling who? Tyra says Mr. C is right. Political will of the judiciary should be questioned. Floating a new court might not yield results, but consume public funds. Let's go straight to the next story from the Guardian newspaper. Mr. C, the federal government substantially met resident doctors' demands. Is a stance that the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, is taking. Still on the National Association of Resident Doctors, they went on strike sometime last week, citing some instances of wages that have been they've been deprived of, in the face of which the president was, said to have traveled to the UK last week for the 6th routine checkup since the inception of this administration. What are your thoughts regarding this stance by the Minister of Labour and where it puts us in the face of this strike?
Okay, Val, actually, that's
me. Yeah, I believe that's me. So I mean, I'll save us some time. Look, if you recall, about 6 months ago, the resident doctors attempted to go on strike and they were talked out of it. That's just looking 6 months back. If you look even further back, you find instances of the government making promises and not fulfilling them. And on so many levels, even including, during the height of COVID and lockdown, and promises that they will give them, they'll pay them, specific allowances during COVID, and for the work that they did, during COVID. Guess what? Those allowances are never paid, even though COVID, even though there's a coalition of donors, even though that money was voted, they're never paid. So it's got to that place where, once again, we're here. If we want a change, and resident doctors are doctors in training, they're specialists, they're already qualified doctors, but doctors in training to become consultants and specialists. And we know we need them, right, in our structure. And if we want to improve the medical, the health sector, unfortunately, since our governments are not going to be responsible, the doctors need to push for it themselves. That's about the only way we see a change. They haven't been successful up until now. And this battle is not just one for their remuneration, which is very key. We all know, the value of money less than 2 years or 18 months ago is not what it is today. But it's also about the infrastructure and the facilities that they have to work with. Doctors having to do surgeries with torchlights and candle is not ideal, and it's no wonder that Canada and other nations appeal to them. Right.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, it's exasperating. That's what it is. It's just exasperating.
I know that feeling. Let's get back to the other exasperating fact. The fact that deteriorating security situation is still in our face. It seems like the major topic of discussion for this morning's conversation. But Mr. C, let's get back to that. It seems to me that, when leaders get into the church environment, using that as an instance, they are spirit-filled and they make a lot of lofty promises, one of which, I wish and I hope it will come to fruition. The Guardian reports that the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, has alleged that some people who are behind these Boko Haram attacks and insecurity situation in Nigeria, that he might be forced to expose them. How plausible do you think this is?
Thank you, Valentine. Very quickly, I read the story. He was at the Anglican Church in Aremo in Ibadan yesterday for Easter Sunday, and he did say that. So he said two conflicting things. He did mention that he might soon name those who are politicizing the insecurity challenges in his state, particularly, and Nigeria generally. Then, if you read the story further, he then says he's handed them over to God. So, which one are we going with? Are you handing them over to God, or are you going to reveal them? And he says he will reveal them soon. No timeline. Now, the truth of the matter is that was just a statement generated it's a clickbait statement. There is no substance behind it. If you knew those who were behind or who are behind politicizing security challenges, what have you done with that information? Have you gone up to the security agencies and told them, okay, Mr. Valentine, Mr. Tunde are the ones politicizing the insecurity challenges in my state. I need you to have a chat with them and get them to stop. I'm not sure he's done that. Now, he then says that they are heating up the polity ahead of 2023, and he advises them to seek the face of God. Now, this is a tendency with Nigerian politicians generally, and it has happened over the past 20 years, at least since this republic started. As soon as you win the election, you stop talking about governance, you are focused on the next election. You were not elected to win elections. You were elected to bring governance to the people over whom you govern. Now, what steps has he taken? He says he's bought 100 Kia cars for security operatives. He's given them communication gadgets. He set up the Western Security Network in Oyo State. It's employed 1,500 men. That's fantastic. Now, I kept reading communication gadgets. That's beautiful. Where are the arms and ammunition they need to carry out the work? The communication gadgets will only help them relay information. It will not help them fight criminal elements who are heavily armed and have the intention to steal, kill, and destroy. Now, it goes beyond sound bites. I didn't hear anything about intelligence gathering capabilities. We seem generally as a nation and our security agencies collectively to be focused on reacting to security challenges and incidents. How about getting information and preventing them? Yes, from a security perspective, they will tell you that you do not know how many plots we stop every day, that it is the plots that we cannot stop that get into the media space. We can't contest that. But improve on your information gathering apparatus, the process, and maybe we will see a further reduction in the number of crime incidents, security incidents that we keep on discussing every day. Thank you.
So I have a question, or actually three questions, right? First, definition of terms. How do you describe in your language? How do you describe politicizing the security matter or security situation?
Okay, so politicizing the security matter is taking a security matter and trying to use it for political gains. So, for example, we all know that Boko Haram is a problem that has predated this administration. But we then say the APC is a useless party, it cannot handle Boko Haram. That if it was the Ajebota party of Nigeria, once we're elected into power, we will root them out. That's politicizing the security challenge.
Thank you for that definition. The reason why I asked that question is, are those behind, because, okay, so those behind funding Boko Haram and insecurity are a different matter. Those politicizing it are a different matter. I don't know that those politicizing it are hidden, because we hear them in the news every day. We hear about the announcements and the speeches they make in all these areas. So how are they hidden that you have to now fish them out? And saying this in church, does that now exclude him from the lots of people he castigates as those politicizing security matters? Does that take him out of the mix? But then, I mean, that's a question hanging in the air for every one of us to answer. We're out of time, so I quickly run through the messages we have. This one on Instagram Live says, that's Sita Adeogun. He says, very pathetic when the way our doctors are being treated. Imagine you pay resident doctors less than $1,000 and expect them not to complain, while the counterparts here in the UK earn up to $3,000 monthly. Most of my doctor friends are abroad already. Theyre from Ajay says, the Labour Minister antagonizing doctors with all the insensitive remarks further shows the level of division. Resolving this matter is just like kicking the can down the road. Sean says, this is silliness. Lagos governor will threaten to expose, or your state governor is also joining that camp. These guys should do what's needed and bring criminals to justice so we can move on with our lives. Brother Exposer. That's what Sean calls him. Dr. I says threats by governors to reveal sponsors of a Papa Gridlock Boko Haram bandits is the new campaign slogan. How do these rulers emerge? This is tiring. Peter from Festac says, good morning, Valentine. I'm Pete from Festac. Nigerian politicians always have a way to sweet talk, most especially when they come to church. It's news or news speech from politically elected, he calls them another word I can't mention on morning radio, but thank you for your message, Pete. And thanks to everyone who joined us on Instagram Live and on YouTube. If you missed any part of the show, please go back to youtube.com/Smooth981FM Lagos. Special thanks to Tunde Okufi at Mr. C. Find them up on social media. And let's follow the conversation with the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. My name is Valentine Ohu. Good morning.